What's up, Wonderlanders, and welcome back to my channel. I am the Hatter, and today we're going to be talking about artistic integrity. I'm just going to apologize for the lighting already. I know it's bad. I typically try to film on, more sunny days, but it's cloudy and rainy this entire week, so doing my best. So in my last two videos that I posted, I talked a little bit about Star Wars and sort of what went wrong with the sequel series, and that kind of sparked another topic, at least in my head, about art and artistic integrity, because in more recent days, art is kind of loosely defined. Most people see it as sort of, objective, and some people see it as subjective. I, of course, being me, probably fall somewhere in the middle and say it's both. It really depends on the art you are looking at. It really depends on what the art means, what it stands for, how good is the art, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. So I do dabble in art. I do consider myself a writer, although I don't have anything officially published. I also doodle a lot. I love drawing. It is a pastime of mine, and my favorite subject in high school was art. I continued to take art classes all through high school, even though if I didn't have to. Point is, I love art. All kinds of art. Photography, film, music, writing, just art in general. And a lot of it is really good. But also a lot of it is really, really bad. But what separates the good art from the bad art? Is it merely perspective? Is it merely, one's own preferences? Or is it merely something as simple as, what does this piece of art mean? What's the passion and what's the sole purpose behind the art? I know for me personally, as somebody who dabbles in art, I have to be motivated to work on my art, whether that is drawing or writing. I have to feel the inspiration, the motivation to actually do something and do something well, because I know I can't sit in front of a page and just put something out on paper and expect it to be good. No, unless if I'm motivated, it's not going to be good. It needs, I need that motivation, I need that passion and that drive to actually put something down onto paper for it to function as a good art piece, something that I can be proud of. If I'm not proud of it, I'm probably going to delete it or erase it and start over from the beginning. First, I kind of want to give an example of what good art is and why certain art is seen as good and others' art is not seen as good, and why art in general has these such polarizing positions of, just subjective and objective views. I'd like to point out two artists. One, everybody will probably know this one, Vincent van Gogh. Yeah, that's right, the ear guy, the Starry Night guy. His art was very realistic. I would consider his art, good. You looked at his art and you knew what you were looking at. That's a sunflower, that's a shoe, that's a guy that cut his ear off. However, during his life, he was not considered famous, and if you do any research into Vincent van Gogh, you would actually see that he was not happy with a lot of his art. There are several corresponding letters between him and a colleague saying that he just doesn't feel passionate about his work, and that he has this strong drive to break away from the realism of the paintings that he had been doing. And that's when we got Starry Night. That's when he started painting things at nighttime. And that was something people hadn't really seen before. It was more abstract than what he was known for. And those are arguably some of his most famous pieces of work. He also painted most of those from memory, because it was nighttime when he saw it, and he couldn't sit down and paint it from there. So he was painting it from his memory versus painting it from something right in front of him. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, you can fact check me on this, but I believe there was a letter that said his Starry Night was his worst work. He believed that to be his worst work because he did it from memory, because he did it more of in a passionate state, which seemed very strange to me because it is his most famous work, and honestly, it's his most beautiful work, in my opinion. The second artist I want to talk about is Frida Kahlo. Now, Frida is known specifically for her unusual appearance, the flowers in her hair, the gaudy dresses, and the unibrow. Most people see that visage and they sort of know who she is, but not a lot of people actually know that much about Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo is actually of German and Mexican descent, and she actually has a piece of artwork that reflects that. I believe it is two identical looking women in two different styles of dress, one more European, one more Latin American. And she has their hearts showing, and there's a string connecting both of those hearts. To me personally, Frida Kahlo's work is not on par with that of Vincent van Gogh. However, her work is more artistic than Vincent van Gogh. And when I say that, I mean her work actually has passion, actually has a purpose, actually has a reason behind it. You look at her work, despite the fact that it looks like it was done by a middle schooler, she has huge symbolism in her work. Her artwork deals with identity, self-doubt, loneliness. She even highlighted some marital issues in some of her work, specifically the fact that her husband didn't want a child, but she desperately wanted. Now, comparing these two artists, they are extremely famous artists. Frida Kahlo for her lack of style, but her focus and passion, and Vincent van Gogh for his style, but his lack of passion. Personally, I think Frida Kahlo's art is better than Vincent van Gogh's, but that's only because she has purpose behind her art. Vincent van Gogh didn't really have purpose behind his art, other than he was good at it. Now that little history lesson is done, and now we come to the sense of artistic integrity, which I would define as a more personal integrity. Are you sacrificing this art for a certain gain? Become less of a passion and more of an agenda. Don't get me wrong, political agendas have always been in art since, we could read and write and knew what art was. Specifically William Shakespeare, he was notorious for putting his own political spin in his plays. Go back, read, watch it. Like, some of the characters were based off of real live politicians and royals that existed during Shakespeare's life. So why is something like William Shakespeare socially acceptable to be political and have an agenda, when something like Star Wars is not socially acceptable to have a political agenda? Well, my argument would be is that these were two vastly different genres. And I'm not just talking about, fantasy versus sci-fi. I'm talking about the way it was brought about. Most of the time when Shakespeare was doing a political drama, it was written in the form of comedy. But the artists here in the Star Wars sequel franchise didn't really have political agendas within the movies themselves. More so, they were screaming it on the outskirts of the film. And because of that, we knew exactly what they were doing, because they told us what they were doing. They wanted a female character just for the sake of having a female character. Like I said again, there's nothing wrong with that. Star Wars The Clone Wars had a female lead for this last season, Ahsoka Tano, and it was amazing. Why? Because she was written well. She didn't have an agenda, she was written with passion. And the writers weren't afraid to give her flaws. Unlike some characters in recent years, I guess really my point is that there is a correct way and a wrong way to write your political views or your political agendas within something. People don't like to be told what to think and how to think. People are a little smarter than that, and I think people would rather have a conversation than just be told what to believe, especially when it comes to their art. Now, art is specifically an entertainment platform, and one that I specifically believe should not hold any sort of worldview or political view or religious view. I do believe that this art should explore those views, but not hold a specific stance, meaning they don't say, this is what's wrong and this is what's right. I believe that the art should be used as a gateway to a good conversation. For instance, there is an episode of The Arrow on the CW that specifically brings up the topics of gun laws in America. Now, that is a hot button issue. However, the episode, and it was only one episode, specifically brought up different viewpoints. They even had neutral viewpoints of people that didn't really care. I remember Felicity Smoke didn't want to talk about the issue at all. She just wanted people to stop talking about it and get along. Meanwhile, Detective Lance preferred guns be off the streets, and while Dinah Lance, no relation, Black Canary, she was a police officer at the time, did prefer that citizens had their guns. Meanwhile, the show did not take a firm political stance on this. They explored all the options, and that's really what entertainment should be, to spark a conversation, not to take a stance, especially when you have your writers in the background screaming the stance at the fans. It does not help. Taking a stance can ruin art. Pushing a political agenda takes away the creative mindset, and honestly takes away the passion out of the art, and it shows. One movie that I want to draw everybody's attention to is the most recent Ghostbusters movie, the all-female Ghostbusters movie. Now, the movie within itself, it was funny. Personally, to me, it was funny. My mom and my sister like it, not because there are women in it, but because the movie is funny. And it is. The movie's kind of one big joke. It feels more like a parody of the Ghostbusters movies than an actual, prequel or sequel or this continuation of the Ghostbusters movies. But I feel like the only reason why it didn't perform as well as it should have, not because the main characters were women, but because that was the reason why the main characters were women, was because they wanted to have an all-female cast of Ghostbusters. You could have done that without that being your reason why. The writing wasn't good. The characters basically were all the same, with exception of, I believe the movie didn't do so well is because there was no passion put into the movie. There was no passion into the storytelling. The movie just wanted to be an all-female cast. That was pretty much it. There was no other reason behind this movie other than to have female Ghostbusters. That was it. There was no other reason. And that's honestly really sad. Why would film industries want to tokenize women like that instead of actually writing a well-rounded character that just happens to be female? If I had a teacup right now, I would totally be sipping. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I'll have a new tea time video for y'all next Friday. And thank you for joining me down the rabbit hole here in Wonderland.